news headlines this week has been dominated by the crisis in Rivers State due to a face-off between the embattled governor, Wike Fubara, and his estranged godfather and minister of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, Wike. However, calm came the way of Rivers State as President Bola Tinubu waded into the political crisis. The relationship between Fubara and Wike suffered a setback following attempts by a section of the state's House of Assembly to impeach the governor on Monday. The political atmosphere in Port Harcourt suddenly turned chaotic when the Assembly, split between the governor and his predecessor, made bold counter moves to checkmate each camp. Joining us on the show to discuss the situation in Rivers State is Magnus Abe. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
Senator Magnus, only 2 days ago, or when was this, Ayo?
Yes, it was.
I was asking someone that, what role are you playing in this crisis as one of the political leaders in Rivers State? Because there are camps now. You are also a stakeholder. Are you in the Wike camp, or are you in the Fubara camp? What's your general take, on this matter? Or you are jubilant that the crisis is turning out this way, given your own experience in the politics of Rivers and your knowledge of the personalities involved?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. First, let me make it abundantly clear. I am not in any camp. The minister is my friend, although we're a bit estranged at the moment. The governor is not my friend. He's not been my friend. I really don't know him that well. But my position as part of Rivers State is that our interest at this point should not only be on the politics and the politicians, but we should also look at the interest of Rivers State. I'm here today not to take sides, but to, as much as possible, call back the minds of Rivers people to the prices that the state has had to pay over time as a result of all this political crisis. And the fact that we seem to have learnt nothing from the situations that we have passed through. What is happening in the state today is no different from what happened the last time between the then minister and the governor, and before that, between the governor and the then minister, who is now back as the minister. We had practically the same situation, and Rivers State lost out terribly because, the center was now working against the state, and the state was working against the center. So if we are not careful, the same kind of scenario, the same kind of drama, the same kind of situation that led us into those quagmires are what is playing out today. There can only be one governor at a time. And however the governor emerged, I would think that the proper thing for us to do is to have a situation where the state can move forward in peace. When I was Commissioner, Dr. Abati, in Rivers State was competing with Lagos. I used to go to Lagos to spy on the Lagos State government, check what they were doing, check the figures for Lagos State, and compare it with Rivers. And we were almost at par. And that was where I developed the respect I still have today for President Tinubu, because he was the only politician that was talking politics with figures. In Rivers State today, we are not conscious of the figures in what we discuss. What is the rate of employment? How many Rivers people have access to good drinking water? How many of our youths have jobs? How many people have access to electricity supply? How many people are properly educated, so to speak? How many children do we have in school? What is the dropout rate? What is the score rate? What is the quality of public education? We need to be talking to all these figures. But instead, what happens is that when we have this kind of crisis, everything shifts to politics. All the focus, all the money, everything will now go to politics. And at the end of the day, it is Rivers people that are going to suffer. So I am not jubilant. I am rather saddened that once more we are back in the kind of situation that none of us would like to be. So on the contrary, Dr. Abati, I would like to appeal to all the parties, all of them, and I'm saying this in utmost good faith. Find accommodation. Nobody is too big and nobody is too small. This whole idea that one person is so much more powerful than the other and therefore his position must be absolute in terms of whatever agreements or negotiations that are necessary to ensure peace is what always brings out these problems. And I will advise the parties from my own experience of this kind of situation to avoid that temptation. In Nigerian politics, most of the time, our tendency is to reward loyalty above everything else. And when we discountenance honesty, integrity, competence, capacity, and focus only on loyalty, we end up with a situation where everybody around the big man is loyal. And over time, you get isolated from the reality of what is actually happening to the common people. Instead of then having a government of the people, you end up with a people of the government who will tell you that whatever you are doing is right. When you point out these things to the leaders, you become targeted. You're not loyal, you become a target. But my advice at this point to all the parties is to tread with caution. I was very happy with the conciliatory stand of the governor saying that it's a father and son quarrel. I think it is left for the father to now take the cue from the offer of peace and also reiterate by making the same kind of comments that will enable them to have a common meeting point so that there will be peace in Rivers State and Rivers people can be able to move forward. I don't see anything to be jubilant about in the situation that we have in our state. I voluntarily withdrew my case and my contention so that, the governor who had emerged can have peace. The state can have peace. And Rivers people can have peace because we can't be doing elections in Rivers State 364 days a year, every year, no matter the season. It's just not right, yes.
All right, Senator Magnus Abe, thank you so much for joining us. And you said something when you were responding to this question about you're speaking from personal experience. Would you like to expound on that? Have you been in this kind of situation? And of course, the reason for that would be some lessons learned. Because there's been, again, back in the spotlight, this conversation around godfathers, high-handedness, one person wanting to take control of the state. So many allegations being thrown back and forth since the burning of the State House, or the bombing of the State House of Assembly complex. What was your experience, if you'd like to share? What lessons have you extracted from that? And then I'm sure you've watched your friend, former Governor Nyesom Wike's statement where he received some leaders from Rivers State and he said that he needed to protect his political base. And so perhaps these actions he was inferring was part of his protection of his political base. What do you make of that?
Well, thank you very much. You would recall that when I was in the Senate, we had a similar situation where some members of the House of Assembly wanted to take over the Assembly in order to impeach then Governor Rotimi Amechi. I led the demonstration then to try to protect the Assembly. The governor of Rivers State at the time had to also march into the Assembly to, how would I put it, to disrupt the proceedings and stop the impeachment that was being sponsored ostensibly, quote and unquote, at that time by the Abuja-based forces of that era. So there is nothing that is happening in Rivers State that is new. The only thing is that when these things happen, it is Rivers people who suffer it at the end of the day. And that's why I don't want to comment on what the minister said. I'm aware that the fact that I'm speaking publicly, no matter my intentions, rather than helping to diffuse the situation and bring about peace, could actually make the situation worse if I'm not guarded in my comments. Nigerians heard him. It is left for Nigerians to make what they will out of what he said. But my own personal advice to the gladiators is that everybody should be mindful of one thing. In politics, let me rephrase that question. And there's no big person. Yes.
Senator Abe, obviously you're playing a very diplomatic role this morning, and I believe, as you've said, in the interest of the River State people, not wanting to take sides because your friend is involved as well. But would you say that his statement with regards to...
No, not because my friend is involved. Not because my friend is involved.
Well, I mentioned also for the people of River State.
Will not help. Will not... Yes.
All right. So let me ask you, in the interest of River State people, do you think that in order to protect a political base, the actions in the last few days are justified?
You see, I started by saying that what I believe that our politics should be about essentially are three things. And I told you that that is why I supported President Bola Tinubu from the beginning. We should look at the numbers. What are the relevant numbers that are important to Rivers people? For every family, that number starts with your income. How much are the families in Rivers State able to make at this time that we are leading? Secondly, we should look at how these numbers are generated and police it. If, for example, let me use the police as an example. If the Inspector General of Police gives a directive that he wants crime, violent crime, armed robberies reduced in every division across the country, a smart police DPO can just stay in his office without even going on patrol and reduce the number of violent crimes in his division. How does he do that? He simply called the recording clerk. Any armed robbery in which the people don't know the name of the gun, enter it as a burglary. Just by taking that decision, he will have the number of armed robberies in his division. But the actual citizens that are out there will not experience any reduction in their suffering because nothing has been done to reduce their suffering. So we need to watch these numbers. We need to focus on how these numbers are generated. And we need to focus on how we bring up the numbers that actually affect Rivers people. That is what is important. And that is what any structure to deliver. Any structure that is delivering that to the majority of Rivers people does not need to be protected by force, because those who are benefiting from the structure would support it. So for me, like I said, I'm being careful not to say things that instead of helping the situation would inflame it. So I don't want to comment on that. But what I think is important to us as Rivers people at this point is how much are Rivers people able to make in this politics that we are doing? How much are they able to generate income for themselves and their families? What schools are their children going to? How many of them have access to good health care? How many of them have access to a better quality of life? How many of them are upgrading? It is not only the politicians that should upgrade. Ordinary people of Rivers State should also be able to upgrade. Those are the things we should focus on. And that is what I want this conversation to be about. The present crisis does not help the state in any of those numbers. It will not help us to increase the number of people that have good drinking water. It will not help us to increase the number of businesses that have access to 24-hour electricity to make them competitive. It will not help us to increase the number of children that are in school or the quality of education that these children are getting and reduce the cost to their parents.
Okay.
Those are the things that I think are important to Rivers people. And this kind of conversation does not contribute to those things.
Okay.
So my advice to all the parties, like I said, there is no big man, there is no small man. And you can have kingmakers in any society, but there is no society in the world where you have king removers, because you try to remove the king is viewed as treason. So let us sheath our swords, let the gladiators sheath their swords, talk to one another. They know what the real issues are. Like I always say to people, most times you find that in a court, it is actually the judge that is on trial. Because between the plaintiff and the defendant, they know who is lying. They know who was there. They know who is telling the truth, but the judge does not know. So I think that if there is a genuine desire and a genuine understanding of the fact that if this conflict continues, every party, no matter how strong that party is looking today, every party will lose out in the end.
Okay.
I think if they have that sobering reminder from somebody like me who has had the experience, it will help to focus their mind on how to cool down, put Rivers State first, settle your differences, and create accommodation that will work. Don't listen to those who are telling you that you're absolutely right, because nobody is absolutely right. Okay. I think that's just the important point I want to make.
Senator Magnus Abe, let me ask you. I had a smile on my face. Weirdly enough, the camera did not catch me when you said that Governor Fubara, you don't know, but former Governor Wike is your friend. I had a smile on my face. You said he's your friend. So let me ask you before I even go into my question. Have you visited him recently? Have you had a taste of his cooking? His very, very interesting cooking? Have you had a taste?
If you heard me when I spoke, I said we are estranged.
Oh yes, so you have not gone to taste his
during
cooking.
The elections.
Yes. Okay, that's fine.
No, I will not go to.
You will not go.
But the point I want to make is that they supported the president. I withdrew my case so that there will be peace in the state and we can all move forward.
All right.
And I don't think this is helping that process. The governor of Rivers State is our governor. Yeah. I'm ready to talk to him, offer whatever advice I can. Okay. The minister, the whole of Nigeria knows he is my friend, and I'm also ready.
But you're estranged.
I know that my intervention will neither be welcome nor useful.
All right.
So I'm passing my message to them through this medium.
Through this
Let
medium,
us have peace in our state.
Help us then. Help us as part of helping Rivers State. Rivers State is supposed to be one of the richest, if not the outright richest and the best state in Nigeria, but unfortunately, there's been a major problem. I've discussed this with you. I've discussed it with Rotimi Amechi. I've discussed it with Tonyeko and a few other people that I know from that state, that state should be the epicenter of goodness in Nigeria. But there's a problem that a lot of people have mentioned. Every single time you get to point of election, the strong man tend to win. What is it about Rivers State that makes it such that you always end up with a strong man as your leader, and when it comes to point of changing the baton, the will of the strong man is what takes you down the path that you really don't want to go? And how do you begin to change that story going forward?
Well, let me be very, very honest with you. There is nothing going on in Rivers State that is substantially different from what is going on all across the other states in this country, where governors have handed over to their successors. In a lot of those cases, the successors were actually handpicked by the outgoing governor. But if you notice, in a lot of these cases, the outgoing governor takes a step back, even if you will intervene or continue to influence affairs. You don't do it in such a way that everybody keeps coming to you with everything, making the man who is on ground irrelevant. In fact, when I was in the Senate, my friend, Senator Wamako, when I spoke to him, there was some issue we had, and I spoke to him. He told me, he said, Magnus, when you have put somebody there, allow the person to stay there. If not, the person will bite you. So he doesn't interfere. That was the attitude he took. And it worked out for him in Sokoto State. In all these other states, there's always tension when you have a new king and an old king, because people will continue to go to the old king. But it is the responsibility of the old king to push them away and say, no, I'm not in charge. I'm not there. I'm not this. I'm not that. So that you don't give room for too much friction on every little issue between you and your successor. This problem is going on in every other state, but it is better managed. I'm not saying that the problem will disappear from Rivers State as long as we have the kind of system we have, where whoever is the leader, quote and unquote, of the party has the power to handpick every candidate and handpick everything, and where public funds and political funds invariably merge, so that if you don't have access to public funds, you are not competitive in the political space. So those with access to public funds will always have an advantage. So the problem is everywhere. But the difference between Rivers State and other states is that our own problem is not being properly managed. So I just want to call on the actors at this time to manage the problem better, so that it is not always Rivers State that is in the news. Let another state come up with their own problem, let Nigerians discuss them while we focus on development.
Senator Abe, well, we're trying to wrap up. But let me ask you, it's not as if the situation in Rivers is substantially different from other states. After all, in Akwa Ibom, we had conflict between Senator Godswill Akpabio after he left and Udo Manuel, who succeeded him. But the real question, if you can just address it briefly, why is Minister Wike so powerful in Rivers State, so dominant, that everybody, including elders, are all now bowing and scraping before him? You say he's your friend, you know him very well. How did he become so powerful? He started as a local government chairman. What happened?
Abati, let me say this to you. Every governor of Rivers State has always been powerful. Maybe you forget that I met you when I was Commissioner for Information in Rivers State. And Dr. Dili was the golden governor of Nigeria. He was even more powerful than some of the figures today. You also recall that Rotimi Amechi, as governor of Rivers State, was one of the most powerful governors in the entire country. He was chairman of the Governors Forum. He was the one leading every... So the position of the governor of Rivers State is the thing that is powerful.
So you people have too much money. You have
Anybody
too much
who is
money.
governor of Rivers State.
You have too much money in Rivers.
Well,
so the governors...
So what I would advise here is, like I've said, there's nothing extraordinary about what is happening in Rivers State. It is that tension exists in every other state in this country. Let us just manage our own better so that our state can move forward.
Okay. All right, Senator Magnus Abe, thank you so much for your insight and philosophical and diplomatic approach to the issues on the table. Thank you so much for your contribution.